The head of the infamous Knights Templar Cartel, Servando Tuta Gomez, was one of the most wanted criminals in Mexico, with a $2 million bounty on his head. Mexican authorities triumphed after capturing the drug lord at his secluded hideout back in February. The high-profile arrest coincided with the ouster of Mexico's embattled attorney general, blamed for botching the investigation of 43 missing students in Iguala. To make sense of these developments and what they mean for President Enrique Pena Nieto, we spoke to political analyst Laura Carlsen. Laura, thank you for joining us. You know, the phenomenon of the narco has been compared to a mythical creature, the Hydra, a creature that grows 1,000 heads when it loses one of them. So do you think when it comes to Tuta's arrest, will it be business as usual? And what happens in Michoacan state, the territory of the Knights Templar? What happens now?
Well, yes and no, because it's true that normally, and especially in the long view, we don't see a major change in terms of the flow of drugs to the United States and in terms of the levels of violence. When this happens, you always have it presented as a major triumph. And in the case of Michoacan, which is especially complicated, there's even some self-defense groups that are saying that this was a planned surrender, and that in fact they're just renegotiating some of the groups and some of the routes within the state to try to reduce some of the levels of violence. Of course, this has been a high-valued target, they call the Tuta, for a long time, and the Knights Templar is one of the most important targets for the government. So it was presented as a major coup on their part, but there's a lot of suspicions that things won't really change after his arrest.
And this has not been the only high-profile arrest in Mexico lately. We've seen a couple of other high-target drug lords go down. What does that say about Mexico's government and Mexico's security forces? Are they making headway, or again, is there something happening behind the scenes that we don't know about?
Well, they're making headway in this area. There were 37 high-valued targets defined in the Calderon administration, and they've gotten like 25 of them now, and so they present this, again, as a major achievement. But the problem is precisely this, the kingpin strategy. The kingpin strategy is that to dismantle a drug cartel, you go after the head. And when the head goes down, then the cartel gradually falls apart or becomes less powerful. But the consequences of this has been throughout the country that it causes more violence, because there's a battle of succession and there's turf wars between cartels to see who takes over. So we're afraid that even in this case in Michoacan, there could actually be an increase in violence rather than a decrease.
As we mentioned, President Enrique Pena Nieto recently removed his attorney general. Does that symbolize a change or a shift in policy, or what do you make of that move?
No, I don't think that there's going to be a real change in strategy in the drug war. And going back to the kingpin strategy, there's almost a universal consensus that this strategy does not work to actually get rid of drug cartels or illicit drug flows. And yet they keep it up constantly. And so I think that they will continue that. In the case of the removal of the prosecutor, Murillo Karam, he's gone to another department. He hasn't left the cabinet altogether. And I think that there what was happening was that he had become a political embarrassment, and possibly would become even more of a political embarrassment. And this goes back to the case of Ayotzinapa, where he handled it very clumsily, the disappearance by the municipal police of 43 students in Mexico, which remains unsolved. And Mexico is on the point of changing from this Attorney General's office to a general prosecutor. And under the figure of a general prosecutor, the president doesn't have the same leeway to appoint and remove general prosecutors, and there's already been opposition to Murillo Karam taking that position and becoming semi-permanent in it. So I think he wanted to make his move before that change took place, thinking that possibly Murillo Karam was not the person he wanted there.
You know, when Pena Nieto first became president, there was a lot of buzz around him. There was a lot of talk of reform, excitement about all these reforms he was hoping to achieve. What has happened? Has reality caught up with him?
Yeah, you could definitely put it that way because he was trying to avoid reality up to now. On the side of the reforms, he had a lot of success. You know, he had a lot of control over Congress and major reforms, the energy reform, the education reform, they all went through. But that has had a backlash within society because those are not popular reforms. There's a lot of grassroots opposition to that. And in addition, he's been putting a lot of effort into image, as if you could whitewash a broken fence and it wouldn't be broken anymore. But it is broken. There's so many things that are broken in Mexico. The human rights, the judicial system, the rate of impunity, and you can't hide that forever. So what we're seeing now with these high-profile human rights cases and with problems in the economy, with low oil prices, is that the reality is rearing its ugly head.
So what role, if any, has the U.S. had in these current circumstances?
Well, the U.S. role in Mexico is always extremely important, and we don't really ever know exactly what it is. And this is true in this case because the United States has kept very quiet about Ayotzinapa and the human rights violations. They're trying to support Pena Nieto at times when it's difficult because these are very serious cases. And during the visit that we saw in January, there was just a lot of patting on the back and no real serious challenges. And I think this is what they're going to continue to do. In the case of La Tuta, they're always celebrating this, the capture of a drug lord as an advance, because this kingpin strategy is really a strategy that comes from the United States, and especially from the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. So they always consider this an advance and yet fail to take into account what really happens on the ground after something like that, which is not always positive at all.
All right, Laura Carlsen, as always, thank you so much for joining us here on America's Now.
Thank you.